Hello and welcome. My name is Tom. This is the Enthusiasm Project Season 9, Episode 7. And it's 7 time to talk about something really fun, which I'm excited to share, and that is websites. Because everybody should have a GeoCities page or an AngelFire page or with like .tripod.com. We're going to talk about websites today. And I think that's going to be really fun because as we've been sort of this season going through like what I would consider basic concepts and fundamentals of, audio video production creativity, a website really is one of those. And one of the most common pieces of advice that I see shared very often online is to start a website, have your own website, be sure you have your own website. And I agree with that 100%. I think it's one of the best things you can do. I think you should have your own website. But the thing that I see missing is while that advice is being thrown out a lot, I don't really see any other like support for it. Like how to do that. What should a website look like? Where do you even begin? So, if you're a seasoned professional web designer, some of this might be old news to you. But if you're not that, or you kind of don't know where to begin, but you feel like you should have a website, that is what this episode is for. And even if you do have website building experience, figuring out what the heck to even put on that website is also a bit tricky. So that's what I want to talk about today. And I think there's a lot of fun about building a website. And so I think that that's going to be a really fun thing to share. Before we get into that, though, I don't want to forget to talk about equipment. So in case you're wondering, today I am recording using the Earthworks ETHOS, which is an awesome condenser microphone that I've used many times, but I haven't used it in several weeks. So wanted to bring the ETHOS back into the fold. That is running into the Rodecaster Pro II. And since this is a condenser mic, I'm just using the Rodecaster's NT1 setting. It was sort of set to that because I was using the NT1 and I connected this mic and I thought, hey, this actually sounds pretty good. Usually I use the ETHOS with just the generic condenser mic setting. But today we're going with the NT1 setting. I am excited because I think tomorrow, the day I'm recording this on Sunday. This episode goes live on Monday. On Monday, I should also get delivery of the Rode NT1 5th generation microphone. And I think maybe the Rode XDM100, the USB microphone, which I'm very excited about. Definitely want to use both of those on podcast episodes. And I'm also gearing up to do an absolutely ridiculous comparison video for the Sennheiser Profile, which is now officially released. So you can order the Profile, which I started talking about like 3 months ago. And now that it's out, I want to take that mic and just compare it against kind of everything since it's a brand new microphone and there's not a lot of reference for that. So that's something I'll be working on, which I'm excited about. You'll probably hear those new microphones on the remaining episodes this season. But for today, I'm on the good old, reliable, wonderful Earthworks ETHOS. We'll get there. And okay, let's talk about websites right now. This episode is sponsored by Squarespace. No, it's not. I'm just kidding. I've used Squarespace. This sounds like an ad. It's not. I've used Squarespace since 2009 or 2010. And I've had a YouTube channel since 2017. And Squarespace has never asked to sponsor anything. And it's like, I've built like half a dozen websites personally and professionally, nothing, which is fine. But it's kind of funny because it's so common and I actually love the product and I've never heard anything there. So Squarespace is my builder of choice, but we're not just talking about builders. We're talking about websites in general and what even goes into that whole world. There's a couple of reasons that I think having a website is important, and then I also just like them for fun. Because if you remember, some of this stuff can also just be fun. On a very practical level, having your own website is something that is very important for not having to rely on anybody else or any other platforms to host your stuff. Even a stable, reliable site, something like YouTube, you're not the one hosting everything, and bad things can happen, and even, companies and platforms can make decisions that you do or don't agree with or don't work for you. Your own website it's your own thing to be in charge of. So that way you can decide how, when, where, what is shared. And, it's not at the whim of like some tech executive or VP that has no idea what you're actually doing. It's your own thing. And that's pretty cool. And so from a practical professional standpoint, that's an important thing. But also that really plays into the personal side of personal websites are still like your own corner of the internet. Things have gotten, I don't know if you could argue better, but graphically better, I guess, since the GeoCities days when everyone would just have blinking banners everywhere and hit counters at the bottom where you could see how many visitors. Actually, that was really fun. And guest books and, the early days of personal websites where things are pretty basic. The outer packaging, the facade of that is prettier now, I guess. Maybe arguably it's not, though, now that I'm thinking about it. But the core, the ethos, if you will, is the same because it's still your corner of the internet where you don't have to. You can make money off websites, and then if you start doing ads and sponsors, then you do kind of become beholden to other things. But I've never done anything like that. And for the most part, a lot of people have personal websites. It's something you just invest a bit of money in. They're not crazy expensive. And then you have your internet real estate that you can do whatever you want with. And that is super exciting and super fun. So that's why I want to talk about websites, because it is such a good way to sort of empower anybody who creates and shares anything. So the way I want to kind of structure this for today is I want to share with you just quickly my experience with websites so you kind of know where I'm coming from with this, why I think having a good site is good. We kind of talked about that a little bit already. Different types of websites. So if you're kind of thinking, okay, I should have a website, what does that mean? We'll kind of go through some of the basics that are pretty common. I do want to talk a little bit about how to build a website and the components and the parts that go into that. And then I'd also, just because it might be helpful, share what I do and how I approach my own website. Not that it's the best or the smartest or the right way to do things, but it's always just sort of helpful. And from all of that, I hope that you can cherry pick things that are interesting or helpful and maybe incorporate. Even if you've already got a website that's up and running, maybe you'll get an idea to just, help make it a little more useful or a little more fun or something. So that's kind of that. My own experience with websites, there's a few different ways you can go about building them. I started making my first websites in high school, so back in like the early 2000s. And I have very specific memories of Microsoft Front Page in 2002. That year and that software are very linked in my mind because that was around the time I was getting very, very, very into the Aquabats, which is my favorite band of all time. And because of that, my best high school friend and I wanted to start a band. And because we had no capacity to play music live or a bit, it was not a thing that was really in the realm of possibility. We did have the internet. And so even with a dial-up internet connection, putting together a website, even finding ways to upload little snippets of songs or sharing a graphic, or, we ended up I call it self-producing an album, but we did make a record of songs that are terrible, and we sold 10 of them, which is crazy. I don't know who would have, that's ridiculous, but it was all burning on the home computer CD, putting the label on, ship. That was fun, very do it yourself. And having our own website, even in high school, was a part of that, just using, I don't know where Front Page came from. I think on our home computer, my mom had Microsoft Office, or it just came with it or something. And I think Front Page might have been part of that. I don't know how I got Front Page on the computer. And then I had Photoshop that definitely was not bootleg Photoshop CS2 to make some graphics. And that was kind of where it started. And ultimately for me, I didn't even the website started as a purpose to share this thing that my friend and I were working on. But it was also then building the website and creating this thing became really fun because it was awesome. Even though I could see the little visitor counter at the bottom never increasing really, it was neat to know I could type something in on my computer, hit a button, and then someone else anywhere in the world could go there and see that change that I had made or see that thing that I'd uploaded. I thought that was really pretty amazing. And I know that we're all pretty used to that. This is a pre-social media time, remember? This is, I don't know if it's Web 2.0 at the time, but that was pretty cool and very exciting. And I got kind of hooked on that. And then I remember trying to dip into Dreamweaver, I think was the application, Dreamweaver, to sort of make better looking websites, and learning a little bit about CSS, where you didn't have to make every page on the website from scratch. You could sort of, almost have pages auto-generate, or at least formats and structures auto-generate. And then from there, moving into stuff like Squarespace, where you don't even need an application on your computer. You just log into a browser and go from there. So I started just for fun. Always kind of had my own website. I had an Aquabats fan site for a while. Really tried to build some message boards, like some old PHPBB and vBulletin message boards, which are like some of my favorite things on the internet that I wish were still around. I remember in college doing like a personal portfolio website for graphic design and photography. And that was a really helpful thing to have. And then as I started working as a teacher and teaching digital media, building websites for our digital media programs became really important. And I remember my very first year teaching, I wasn't teaching digital media yet, but it was it was not long after the 2008 like financial crisis. And so economically things were terrible. It was an awful time to go into any profession, much less teaching. And so I finally was able to get a job. And at the end of that first year, I got pink slipped because of just budget cuts. And when they need to cut budgets, they cut teachers, and they just cut teachers based on seniority. And I was a new teacher, so I was at the bottom of the list. Fortunately, like at the very, very last minute at the end of the school year, my pink slip was rescinded and I got to keep my job there. And then the next years when I moved into digital media, it was weird because I had also won like Teacher of the Year that year. So I had this plaque that was like Teacher of the Year. And then I had a pink slip in my other hand and I was just like, this is very mixed messages. But all that aside, I moved into digital media, which at that school, I ran one side of our program, which focused on like audio video production. And another teacher ran the other side of the program, which focused more on like digital photography and graphic design and animation. And together it made up it was like a 2-track program for students. And we have been talking about this, and the other teacher, like my coworker, said that he was in a similar situation several years prior to that. And what he learned from there was to make himself as like indispensable as possible. And nobody knows all the things that you do. So he had put together a website for his part of the program where he listed everything they do. He was listing student projects, cataloging awards and recognition and scholarships and schools students got into, everything, so that if it ever came into question what the value was of this, anybody could just go there and see it. And then it was also a resource for putting student assignments. This is like pre-Google Classroom and stuff. So it was a place where students and parents could go get info. So I thought that was an amazing idea. And then I built a website for my side of the program. And then we worked together to build like the whole website for the program itself. And then when I moved schools and started a program from scratch, it was like, yes, we need a website here. So I kind of took that same, again, ethos and created a website with that, and then did some websites for other schools, in addition to continuing to try to do personal websites. And then I started with I rebooted a very simple personal website in like 2017 when I started YouTube, and just sort of left it very simple, which I'll talk about that kind of website in a little bit, and then decided to turn that into something a little more complex, and that's where I'm at right now. So I've built lots of different websites personally and professionally. I'm definitely not a professional web designer. So if you are, you might hear things. We're not really talking about like code and process here, but you might hear things where you're like, that is a terrible practice. I am very much if I can figure out a way to make it work and it works, we're good. And it might not be technically correct. And I definitely spend a lot of time on Google and YouTube when working on websites, just like, how do I do this? Let's figure it out. Let's search it up. So that's kind of my experience. I'm definitely like a brute force, constantly Googling web designer is sort of where I'm at there. But that's my experience. And again, the why behind a website really comes down to you being able to stake your claim and own a corner of the internet, even if it's very simple, even if it's essentially a directory of other places people can find you. But one place that you can easily send someone to find everything else that you want them to find, and then you get to curate that to show and share whatever you want. You don't have to rely on other people like, oh, they'll find my YouTube channel and then maybe they'll find my Twitter account or my Instagram or my website or this thing that I have for sale or these services that I offer. You get to direct people to this one spot, and from there you can then control. This sounds nefarious, but it's not. You can control what they see and where they go from there. And it's a really important thing. And again, you're totally in charge. as a control freak, I love that. And it's a very nice feeling to know that it can be however you want it to be because it's yours. And there's not going to be a random, like, we updated everything and now things are totally different or something's broken. And, although you can do that to yourself, because my portfolio site that I had prior to my current website, the reason I had to reboot it was because I did make a mistake and accidentally just delete the whole website with the press of a button. And that's fun. So that was miserable. I had to start from scratch. So that's a little bit of background. Let's move in now and talk about types of websites. So if you've heard that advice, you've heard people say, hey, I need a website. I should have a website. Great. And you go to start a website, but you're like, what is going to go on my website? What is it? Just a picture of me smiling with my name on it? Like, what do I put on this website? Obviously, there are a lot of different types of websites. There's business and personal. There's different types of design, different types of functionality and features. From the point of view of someone who I guess we'll call like an independent creator, whether it's full-time, part-time, doesn't really matter, but you're somebody who makes stuff, videos, podcasts, whatever it might be, and you want to share it online, what type of website would make sense for someone like that to have? At the simplest level, I think it would basically be like a landing page or maybe a directory website. And that was what I had for probably the first, year and a half or 2 years of having a YouTube channel, was just essentially a landing page. You could go to this URL and it would just be like an image that I thought was kind of nice. It had a quick little like 3-line blurb about who I am and what I do. My name is Tom. I have a YouTube channel about this stuff. And then it was just a couple of links. Here's my YouTube channel. Here's my, social media stuff. I don't even think I had a podcast yet at the time, so that wasn't there. And that was kind of it. I think there was a contact, like send an email here or whatever. And that was it. It was one page. There was nothing else to it. It was just a landing page, but it was nice to have because I could put that in email signatures. I could tell that to people. I could just give that URL. The person could go there, and then everything else, instead of giving them a bunch of different usernames and URLs and things to remember, just go to this one spot and then find the other things that you want to find from there. That was really helpful. And just having that simple website, even though the website itself didn't have a lot of functionality, it did also allow me to then have my own email domain, like custom email. So instead of email address at gmail.com or whatever, you can have email address at yourdomain.com, which is, we're going to talk about that a little bit later because that's a very big deal. But even just that simple landing page opened up that type of flexibility, which, to be honest, you don't even need a landing page for. But my point is that very basic website that took, 30 minutes to design from start to finish still included a lot of functionality and a lot of things that are really helpful. So at the very basic level, just a landing page, like directory website, is a good place to go. If you don't know where to begin, or, you think you might have to spend a lot of time creating a website, I think that's a good place to start. From there, the next kind of website, I'm just calling sort of like a personal everything site. So obviously, if you have a business, if you own a coffee shop and you want to make a website for your coffee shop, I think that's pretty cut and dry. You kind of know what to include in a business website like that. It might get a little murkier if you're not like a brick and mortar business, but maybe you're a freelance videographer, or you do real estate photos, you do wedding videos. Then your website, even that's a little cut and dry. Still, who am I? Maybe you have your rates, you have some examples of your work, where you're located, how to get in contact, what's included. Maybe you have like a description of different packages that people can purchase for your services and stuff like that. So I guess that's still pretty cut and dry. But then there's also like, if you're not just doing this for business, I guess that's a little more cut and dry because you have a specific purpose, right? If you're a real estate photographer, you want to build a website, you kind of know what to include. But if you're just a person like I was, and you have a YouTube channel, you make some stuff, but maybe it's not even something you would necessarily consider a business at that point, or it's a whole bunch of different things and you kind of don't know how to encompass it. It's sort of like a personal website that just sort of includes a little bit of everything about you. You can go to your website, and from there we can learn everything about you. So it's more in depth than the landing page would be, because we're going to learn about you, and we're also going to see the different stuff that you're working on and the stuff that you do. Some people, depending on depending on what they're working on, they might have multiple websites for different things. So I have one website for everything. You can go there, you can find out about me, you can find YouTube stuff, you can find podcast stuff, courses, everything's right there. But some people will do like, here's my personal website that has everything about me. Here's my podcast's website. Here's my, portfolio website. Like everything is a little bit different, which you can totally, it's all what works for you, right? There's no right or wrong. It's all about what works for you. But one of my favorite things about having a website as a single like individual is that I don't have to then have a million URLs to send people to. Just go to this one thing. If I never know where to send someone, I just like go to this one URL and everything else is there. And I love that. So if you want to take it above having just a landing page, having sort of like your personal everything page, which then does become a portfolio. It does include information. You could even then start taking it a step further. And a lot of people do things like starting to add resources to their website. That could be things like through blog posts, or maybe it's, actual stuff like templates and files that people can download and use, like, or even just information. Like you actually become like a resource. I'm thinking of a website that keeps popping up to mind is called the Photographer, which is a fantastic name. And they do all kinds of camera related like reviews and articles and stuff. And my favorite part about their website is you can go into gear reviews and go into camera bag reviews, and they have over 100 at least well-written with photos, camera bag reviews from years past. And that has been really helpful as someone who's been kind of like searching for perfect camera bags over the past year. That's been such an awesome, every time I go to their website and they have the bag that I'm looking for, it's a great resource. And I actually like it better than watching a YouTube video because I like how they include the photos. I like the structure. I can kind of like easily scroll through and see the final score and the main points and then kind of go through the article. It's almost, for some reason, the way they put their stuff together, I feel like it's a more efficient way for me to get the info that I want, rather than, a 17-minute kind of meandering YouTube video. And even though I love YouTube bag review videos as well, because they're really fun to watch, but this has been a great resource. And I think there's sites like that. I think of Podcastage. That's a personal website for a podcast, but it's also a really awesome resource of information, material. Like if you want to help figure out audio gear, find the right microphone, get comparison audio, get high quality audio, it's a really good resource. So your website doesn't have to just be about you and spotlight on you. It can then be a collection of, things that become a resource. It could be a combination of all of those things. That's sort of the direction I've gone, where it's like, it's sort of everything, and it's kind of a mess. And I love that about it, honestly. I don't want it to look like a bank website. I want it to just sort of be like my corner of the internet. And ultimately, that's what your website is even in today's world where it sort of feels like everything is homogenized, and maybe some of that like quirky, fun creativity from the earlier days of the internet isn't as readily available or visible because there's like 3 websites that people go to now. You can still carve out your little corner of the internet and do what you want with it, and no one can take it away from you as long as you're paying for hosting, right? Like, and I guess the host doesn't go out of business, but it's your thing to do what you with as you like. And so those are kind of like different types of websites that I've created and worked with over the years, and that if you're listening to this, probably a direction that you might go into with your own website as well. And of course, the sky is also the limit. It's not just those things there. But if you've decided that you need a website, you kind of have an idea. Maybe you're going to do a landing page. Maybe you're going to do resources, combination of everything, portfolio, whatever. How do you actually build that? It's really hard, especially if you've never built a website before, to figure out where do I even begin building a website. So I'm going to start with the fundamentals. If you've done websites, you probably know some of this, but if you haven't, it could be a bit of a mystery. There are really 2 major components that go into having a website that another person on the earth can access, and that is your URL and your hosting. Sometimes they're combined. Sometimes you can pay for website hosting and it will include a URL. Sometimes you can sign up for a free host and it will include usually it's not going to be yourname.com, but it will be like yourname.their service.com or something. It'll be a subdomain, basically. Almost how like YouTube is, youtube.com/TomBuck, that, I'm being hosted on YouTube. Some hosts can do something like that, but you need a URL where people can find you, and then you need to host that. So at the most hardcore level, you can do all of that yourself. You can use, like I mentioned, old school applications like FrontPage and Dreamweaver, but you can use more modern versions of applications where you're not logging into a browser-based editor like Squarespace or something that's pre-built. You're building everything from scratch, coding everything from scratch, and then uploading it to a server. You can even buy and set up your own server. So if you really don't want to answer to anybody, you can just create your own, you can host everything yourself, have your own registered domain, which is really the only thing you would need to do is register your domain, get your server online, and then you can host your own website. And that is really like, as long as your URL is registered and you have power running your server, no one can take anything away from you. But that's also a very complex thing to set up. It's not something I would really want to deal with. So for most of us, using an existing hosting provider, which essentially means there's a company that has a bunch of servers and you're just renting out space on their server and they're hosting your website, and then you're registering a domain name that points to that website on that server. And that's it. You do not have to buy your domain through your web host. You can if you want to, and sometimes they cut you good deals on that, but you don't have to. So that's kind of the main components for most of us. Most of us probably aren't at the point where we want to set up our own server to host websites. We probably just want to go somewhere, sign up for hosting, and set up a website there. That's probably the way to go. And most of those hosts have their own building components. So I've talked about like Squarespace. You log into your Squarespace account, and then just through your browser on any computer, you can build a website there. You don't need other applications or anything. And at this point in time, most of those online builders are pretty good. You don't always have full control over everything, but they're pretty good. A lot of them give you templates to start off with, which I would definitely recommend using a template because it builds out a website with some cool functionality. But I would really recommend not just sticking with how the template is. Like, start with a template and then bend it, warp it, shape it to, ultimately not look like the template. It's going to look like your own thing, but the template's a good starting point. I think that's really important. And then how you want to register your domain, there's stuff I'm sure you've heard of, sites like GoDaddy, or that's like the only one I can think of right now. Google is where I host mine or register my domains, because I found Google doesn't really mess around with pricing. Some third-party places, like if you want to register a .com domain, you'll find that it's for some reason way more expensive than other ones. And Google, I have found, is like, it's the cheapest price. If it's not a hugely popular name or something someone else already owns, a lot of .com domains are like $12 or $13 a year, maybe $20 a year. Very affordable and very easy to register. If your domain is I don't know if you'd call it like high demand. If your domain is something, I think what it really comes down to is something that somebody else has already owned, but they let like expire because they didn't need it anymore. I think that raises the price a little bit. And I don't know this, but just based on what I've seen over the years, because it's like, oh, this is a desirable domain. If you try to type in something that no one's ever tried to register before, you can probably get it for pretty cheap, because it's like, this, nobody wants this. But if it's something that's already been registered and expired, it's a little more in demand because someone has already wanted this. And then, of course, there's people who already own domains and will put them up for sale, and then they can charge stupid prices, and people do squatting on domains, which, they'll just think of any number of names that they want to register and hope that somebody wants it bad enough to pay them for it later on, and then they'll charge, tens of thousands of dollars. I almost accidentally fell into this when I was like late high school, just out of high school. I was trying to put together a personal website. I wanted to register a .com domain. I didn't know. I remember spending hours trying to figure out what a good .com domain would be. And I was trying all this stupid stuff. And eventually I was going to I like just stuff with my name, something with Tom, but obviously like tom.com is taken. But I liked the rhyme of like the sound of Tom plus .com. So I was like, oh, something. And then I was like, I'm just going to do TomTom.com because that sounded funny to me. And it was available for like, I don't know, $20 or $30 a year. And I was like, that's like too stupid. I'm not going to do that. Right after that, I don't know if they're around anymore, but a GPS company called TomTom came into play, and maybe they have to still be around. But if you remember, like the early to mid 2000s, before smartphones and everybody had GPS, if you wanted a GPS, you needed like a Garmin or a TomTom in your car, and then it would be your GPS in your car because most cars didn't already have it built in. And they were hugely popular devices. And I don't know, I must have like tried to buy that domain like a day before they must have registered it because the timing was crazy. And it was available for purchase for like $30, but I was a very poor like student at the time. I wasn't, spending $30 on something wasn't what now. If I have a good idea, I just register the domain for it because I'm like, I just want to get this right now because I like this idea, not because anyone else is going to want it because they're usually dumb ideas. But in this case, if I had registered that and then this giant tech company needed the domain a little while later, I would have been able to sell it to them for like probably a very decent amount of money, and that would have been awesome. But that didn't happen. So I just couldn't believe it. Like, wow, that was like, I remember having it in my cart, check out, like click the place order button, and then I just didn't. I really should have. Anyway, that's kind of you. Ultimately, that is all to say that you will find different prices for different domains. Obviously, a .com domain is going to be the most expensive, even though you can still get them for like $12 to $20 a year sometimes. That's the most common one because when people think of websites, they think of blank.com. Even still, that's the most common one, most popular one. So that's the first thing I would recommend. As soon as you switch to a different subdomain or a different, that's not subdomain, whatever it's called, .thingy. That's what it's officially called, .thingy. As soon as you switch to another one of those, it's harder for people to remember it. Because if your website is firstnamelastname.com and you tell someone, they will easily remember, like, oh yeah, firstnamelastname.com. If you say it's firstnamelastname.net, .biz, .whatever, that person, if they want to go look you up later on, they're going to forget that, and they're just going to look at .com, and they're not going to find what they need. However, a couple of years ago, a whole bunch, I can't remember what these are called, a whole bunch of those options opened up. So instead of just being like .com, .net, .biz, it's like, .academy, .art, .podcast, .live, .whatever. So it's pretty cool. And I know, like, for live streaming, what a lot of people will do is they will get a URL that's like their name.live. And when they're on a live stream, if they want to invite guests, they will basically link that to like their Ecamm interview login thingy. So they can say, like, yeah, if you want to jump on the podcast, go to myname.live, and it'll just take you right to the login thing. So there's there are really cool options. I know Peter Lindgren, who started I started a Final Cut Pro course last year, and I was shocked that learnfinalcutpro.com was available for $12. So I bought that. Peter did fcpx.academy as his Final Cut Pro course URL, which is really cool. fcpx.academy. So, you might be able to find alternatives to .com that actually work better for your need. So definitely browse around. You can direct multiple URLs to the same website. So depending on what you're doing, like when I did my very first course, for example, the Podcaster Playbook, I registered podcasterplaybook.com. It wasn't taken yet. But I also registered like podcastplaybook.com. I think I might have even done like podcasting playbook. I registered things that I thought people might accidentally think it was called. Especially, it's called the Podcaster Playbook, but Podcast Playbook seemed like, yeah, that's also something. So I registered like several domains that I thought might accidentally type in. And that might be something to do too. If you have, depending on your name, say you're using your name, for example, you might want to do variations of it based on how people pronounce, misspell, remember your name, all that kind of stuff. But you can have multiple domains lead to one website, which is kind of cool. I think that buying the domain is really fun and finding the one that you want. Most of the time you can register them annually, and then at least Google, and I've registered a few through Squarespace, and like NetFirms is another host that I've used in the past because that was where I built my free websites back in high school, and they're still around. Most of the time, you will get notifications. You can set up auto renew, and most of the time they will also send you reminders like 60 days, 30 days, 14 days prior to your domain expiring, because you don't want it to expire because then you could lose it. Not because somebody else is like waiting and just can't wait till your domain expires, but because there are a lot of like bots and automated things that just scoop up recently expired domains because they know it may have expired on accident. Someone's going to want it back, and now you're going to have to buy it back from them at an inflated price. So it's definitely in your best interest not to let your domain expire unless you're 100% sure that you never want to use it again. And a really cool thing more recently also, when I started doing websites and you registered a .com, all your info was kind of public. So the name of the person who owned the website, their phone number, their address was just sort of listed in directories that someone could look up, like the Whois database. And then after a while, you could start paying extra. Sometimes it'd be like $5 a year, $10 a year to have that blocked out so they couldn't just see your phone number, because you need to register the website to an actual person. It's kind of freaky to have your info just like available online like that. And they used to add like privacy for an added fee. And it seems like lately, and by lately, I mean maybe in the last 7 years, when you make websites, it's a lot more like by default, the info is private. So it might be a name, but your phone number, your mailing address, all that stuff might not be there. Or you can decide what you want. You could put a PO box, or if it's a business related thing, there's some rules about being accessible and knowing who it's registered to. But something to be aware of when you register a domain is what registration info is going to be available to other people. And fortunately, it's very easy to now not have all of your personal info just broadcast to everyone. So that's definitely an important one. And that's, definitely, if you have a domain that you like and it's available, buy it now, because oh boy. So those are some of the ways to make websites. If you're doing what most people do and you're paying to host your website on somebody else's server, like some kind of service, maybe you're using Squarespace, maybe you're using Wix or WordPress or something, but you're hosting somewhere else, you'll probably be able to design your website through some kind of builder or thing that they have, which is great. And they've all gotten pretty good, although, it's not necessarily totally what you see is what you get in terms of like, I'll drag and drop this here and put this here, and my whole website is built. Everything is moving closer to that direction, which is nice, but it definitely takes a lot of patience and a lot of time spent Googling or searching YouTube for answers. Or Squarespace especially has a really good knowledge base of like message boards and support posts. It's almost like every time somebody asks a support question and their customer support team gives them a solution, they just sort of log that in the knowledge base. So you can look up a lot of questions that other people have already had and find answers to it, which is really good. They're all great. Most of them have free trials. So I would recommend, maybe trying a free trial of see what you like and what works for you before registering a domain or anything official. Like you can go in and just get a free subdomain and see which one you like and which one might have a template or an interface that you like a lot. And then a lot of them, especially something like Squarespace, if you decide to register, go find like a YouTube video or a podcast that's sponsored by them and get the promo code, because you can easily get 10-15% off by doing that. And they're such like prolific sponsors of things. I'm sure you watch or listen to something that's sponsored by them. So use that promo code that you've been hearing for a long time and get some money off of that. I don't have one, but I definitely did that when I registered for my Squarespace page. I used the Nerdist promo code from the Nerdist podcast back in like 2010. I was like, yeah, I'm going to do that. And that was how I got my like 15% off. I do prefer Squarespace. Another very popular one is Wix. I do have a bit of a story about Wix though, and it might not be fair for me to share this, but I don't care because this is my podcast, so I'm going to. Wix is another good one, and Wix might even be more popular and a little bit easier to use than Squarespace. I don't know if that's true anymore. I used to use Wix a lot because it was easier to get for free a functional website up and running. And so I would use this with my students when I was teaching. Like I would have senior students create portfolio websites during their senior year just to understand the process, kind of what we're talking about today, like how to get a basic website up and running. And then Wix would do that for free, and they wouldn't have their own custom URL, but they would have, a subdomain URL that they could still use and turn in for credit and stuff. And of course, most students, they didn't build amazing websites. They might not have ever wanted a website again, but every once in a while, I'd have a student who kind of understood it or would need a website for things that they were working on or post-high school plans, and then they would take it a little further and pay for hosting or get a domain or something, or beg their parents to buy the domain or whatever it might be. And it was Wix was a really good way to, you can kind of build out your website for free. Other people can see it for free, and then if you like it, you can pay to host it, and then you lose some limitations. You get your custom URL and all that stuff, which is very, very cool. The problem with Wix, though, I never used it for my own stuff because I used Squarespace forever. But in 2016, when I started teaching at the last school that I taught at, I was going to build my own website. I was just using Squarespace for that. I was also asked to rebuild the school's website. And so I was like, okay, I'll do that. And I decided that I wanted to use Wix for that because I was not running the school's website. I was just building it and then handing it off to someone else to maintain and update. And I thought that Wix was going to be a little bit simpler for somebody else to manage and to handle. And so I put the website together. I was kind of getting ready to hand it off. And then our school district, in their infinite wisdom, because school districts always love embracing new technology and taking chances with that stuff, decided that any school website had to be done through their own absolutely terrible website directory builder thing, which literally a GeoCities page was light years beyond. And fortunately, at that point, I was like, oh, cool. I'm not building that because that's a nightmare. And as terrible as it looks and as awful as it is, anybody can figure it out. So I didn't need to build the website and hand it off to someone. Someone else could just take it over. And of course, they're not even risky enough to have their own domain. So your school website has to be schoolname.district.california.k through 12.gov.biz/net. No one's ever going to visit this website because there's no way to get it's so terrible. Anyway, point being, I didn't need this Wix site. And because school districts run very slowly when it comes to budgeting, the way we were doing it, which I was fine with, was I'm just going to do it. I'm going to pay for the hosting and then I'll get reimbursed afterwards. So I think I was doing monthly hosting on Wix because I didn't want to pay for a year in advance and get reimbursed. Or no, was it? Oh my gosh, no. I'm totally remembering the story wrong. I paid for a year of hosting, which wasn't a ton. It was maybe $150. And I did get reimbursed for that, but we ended up not using the website. And so when we didn't need the website anymore, I went in and I canceled my account, turned off auto renew because I wasn't going to need it anymore. A year later, then, my credit card got charged for another year of hosting for this website that was wait, what? We're not even using this anymore. And I turned everything off. So I went in to my account and I couldn't find any way to undo this or anything. And I don't even honestly know. I honestly don't know how I was charged, but I was charged by them. So I said, okay, mistakes happen. This is no big deal. I'm just going to contact them and, they'll refund it and they'll understand. There was no way to contact them. And I guess I'm a little slightly more savvy now, where I might have at the time I didn't even have Twitter. So I didn't think of oh, you just tweet at them. And then because it's public, they have to respond, which is absolutely terrible if that's what you have to do to get companies' attention sometimes. I didn't know about that method at this time. I was there's no public email listed. There's no public phone number. They didn't even have a chat option on their website. I think they had a bot, and it wouldn't direct you to anyone. It'd just be here's our terrible knowledge base of unhelpful articles. I was okay. And even I was trying really hard to look into domain registration, business name. How do I contact anyone at this company? It was not possible. Keep in mind, this was early 2017. It could be very different now, so the things I'm saying might not apply at all years later. But at the time, there was no way to contact them directly. I spent a day and a half until I finally found one email to kind of reach out to and sent them a thing explaining what happened. never heard back, like sent again, never heard back. There really was. It wasn't like I was missing a thing. They did not want you to contact them, which of course, then I'm like, yeah, of course they don't. They want you to sign up for free, and then they want you to pay for hosting. They want to auto renew everything, and they don't want you to reach out to them to have any contact with them. Again, don't know if they're still doing it this way. So that was really frustrating. And, they charge whatever it was, $150, $200 for a year of hosting. And I spent so long trying to send emails, waiting for replies. Nothing happened. So eventually I just went to my credit card company and disputed the charge. Like, this is what happened. I don't want this service. I cannot contact them. I'm not using it. I'm disputing this charge right here. And literally within 30 minutes of me filing that dispute, I got an email from Wix that was like, here, the thing has been refunded. They were like really angry about the dispute. And so the thing had been refunded. My account had been canceled. And I forget how it was worded, but they essentially banned me from ever using their service again. So I'm like not allowed to make a Wix website anymore, which is fine because I absolutely don't want to after this. But it blew my mind that I was trying for days to reach out to them, couldn't do anything. As soon as it went the other way, and now I was like not taking their money, taking my money back from them, within minutes, they directly reached out to me and then banned me from using their stuff ever again. I don't know how that works. I feel like I could probably, how would they know if I signed up and wanted to pay them more money? But I think it's funny that I'm banned from using Wix, and I don't recommend them anymore, but that's also very personal and very weird and was like 6 years ago. So in the interest of giving yourself the best options, maybe you want to take a look. Maybe they have a nice chat application or a contact form now. But yeah, I like Squarespace because I've never had any of those issues in the 13 or 14 years that I've been using them. And when I've had to reach out to customer service, they just reply. There are also more premium things like lead pages, for example, which is kind of more geared towards if you want to build you can just build a website, but the functionality is like if you want to also almost like build like a sales funnel and like an infrastructure and multiple sites and things are connected, because it's significantly more expensive. It's like, $500 to $700 a year. It is really nice. And because you're paying that much, you get like instant customer support. Like they will solve your problem right away. You can always reach out to a real person 24/7. So there are kind of even more premium sites, but for the most part, I had done a lead pages to make the sales pages for my very first course when I put it out there, but I have since gotten rid of it because I just changed the way that I do. I don't do advanced sales pages or funnels. I'm just like, here's the course. This is what it includes. If you want it, here it is. It's probably the worst way to sell stuff, but it feels the best for me. So I don't use that anymore. That's where Squarespace, you're a paying customer. It's a good, reliable service. They do have customer support, but they're not going to necessarily pick up the phone first ring on a Sunday night at 11 p.m. kind of thing. Whereas other services might if you're paying $800 a year. So anyway, that's what I use. I use Squarespace. And that's just how you build your website. I started with a template on mine. I've always just found a template that I like and then tweaked it and changed it because you can put in your own code. You can modify pages. You can change themes. You can, I don't even know I honestly have no idea what template I'm using on Squarespace now. Because it doesn't look like any of the ones. I can't scroll through their directory and be like, oh, that's my website, because it doesn't look like any of them because I've changed it over so much time. And that's kind of a thing too. I think it's important to know that your website's going to change and evolve. And it does make sense if you want to launch a website to have it feel pretty complete before you officially launch it. Maybe you put up a landing page and then behind the scenes, you're building out a bigger website to eventually turn on and switch the landing page out. But, you're always going to be adding pages, changing things, changing info. That's kind of the point of it. It shouldn't really necessarily be this static thing forever. And I've had great luck with Squarespace, especially because, and I'm sure other services do this too, but they've added so much more in recent years where it's not just website building, but you can do appointment scheduling, you can do selling of things, you can include, calendars and member areas, and they're really becoming so feature rich, and I quite like that a lot. And then another big thing that comes with having your own website, I mentioned this earlier, but let's talk about it a little more now, is having your own email domain. So even if you just have a URL registered, And even if your website is something simple like a landing page, being able to connect an email to that is huge. Depending on your host, it may or may not be included. What I do, because I register most of my domains through Google, is I have a Google account that I use to register like multiple domains. So I can log into that account. I can see all the domains that are registered. I think it's just domains.google.com is where you can go to like search and register. So you can have one Google account that owns many, many domains. From there, each domain, you can change the settings. You can change where it points to, where it forwards to. So when you get hosting, you'll go into your domain setting and tell it like, hey, go over here to this URL or to this this website on this server. And that's where the website's going to be. But you can also add a Google workspace to each domain, which varies in price. I honestly don't know the price. I've had it go from $6 to $20 a month. And I think it depends on how many domains you have and how many admins and things. But it's relatively affordable. I think it might be like $6 or maybe a little more if you just want one domain. And what you get is you don't just have in addition to, you've paid $12 a year or whatever for your .com domain, you now have an email address registered to that. So it can be your name at email.com. So like mine, for example, I have a few. My domain is hi-my-name-is-tom.com. That was the one I eventually ended up landing on like 14 years ago. And then I can have different email addresses there. So I can have like contact at hi-my-name-is-tom.com, Tom at hi-my-name-is-tom.com. I have different ones for different things, different inboxes. So that way it's not all just one thing. This is very huge. You don't necessarily need a bunch of different ones, but having like your name at yourdomain.com is a very big deal if what you're doing is at all in any way, even part-time, kind of businessy. Being able to reach out to someone or email someone, talk to a potential client, partner, sponsor, whatever it might be, from your own domain and not Gmail or Yahoo or whatever.com is a very big deal. And I 100% recommend that for just the simple professionalism of it, the clean professionalism of it. Having your own email domain is a very big deal. It's not hard to set up. And once it's set up, it functions just like, at least in my case, because I use Google, functions like any other Gmail account does. And that's it. You don't notice anything else except that the domain is your own domain. So even if you have the most simple website in the world, I absolutely recommend it. Even if it costs a little bit extra a month, the $6, whatever, is really worth it to have that. And then as time goes on and you grow, you could create more. And that's, even if you were to hire people to help you or you work with a partner, you could each have your name at thedomain.com kind of thing. And that's a very, very important thing, having your own email set up. And you don't need a big advanced website to do that. But I absolutely recommend it. And I'm sort of working on the assumption here, but I guess I didn't cover it. Having the email be simple. Don't have it be, like, I don't know, noob skater boy 420 at domain.com. Like, no, don't have that be your domain. Like, just have first name at domain, first name, last name. Really simple. You've probably worked at a company or talked to someone from a company who has like the first initial last name email address. Stuff like that works really well. Keep it simple, keep it easy for people to remember, easy for people to use, and then it will work really well. So those are kind of the components that go into it, having how websites work, the basics of building one, the different types of websites that you might want to include. And the last thing that I'll share is I'm just going to kind of run through my own website and explain some of the stuff that I have on it and some of the stuff that I've used on it. If you want to look at it, it's hi-my-name-is-tom.com. And that is a ridiculous URL. But the homepage is just sort of a long, simple thing with a whole bunch of stuff on it. For me, and this is personal preference, this is not the way to do things. In a world where design trends tend to lean more towards like minimalism and kind of sparse and empty, and in my opinion, a lot of websites sort of look and feel the same, I wanted big and bright, and there's kind of just a lot of crazy crap on the walls. Like, it's that kind of website. It's not perfect, and I'm not trying to make it perfect, and there's definitely janky design elements that I would be capable of doing better, but I like that it feels like a person's website, right? Like it's my website, and I made it, and it has stuff on it. So the homepage, when you go there, obviously it has like a photo, so you know who this person is. I do have my courses right at the top, along with a little YouTube link, because those are kind of some of the bigger things that I'm focusing on. And the courses, I want people to know that I have courses available. I have a YouTube video that I have an embedded playlist. So every week when the new YouTube video comes out, it just auto-populates right there on the website. I do have a mailing list. So I am using ConvertKit. There's a bunch of different services to do email stuff, but I've been using ConvertKit for a while. I did start a mailing list, and we didn't really talk about this. This was another thing, almost like build a website, where people were saying, have your own email list, have your own email list. And I'm like, why? I don't want to spam a bunch of people. I don't want to do stuff. It is a really nice thing, though, in a world where even if you create on YouTube and you have a successful channel, things can happen and things go wrong. It is nice to have a direct way to contact people, not just everybody, but people who have voluntarily opted in to have some level of extra contact from you, whatever it might be. In my case, my email address, like I don't force people to sign up for anything. It's literally just, hey, if you want to know more, what does it say? Join the mailing list to stay up to date with neat stuff, including helpful guides, courses, and more. No spam, I promise. And that's like literally it. I don't send out a ton of stuff, but if people choose to sign up, then I don't feel guilty for sending stuff because they chose to sign up for it. So lately what I've been doing is like a monthly newsletter that just includes some stuff I've been working on. I try to share some free resources like, hey, this is totally free. I did one recently about USB versus XLR microphones. I've done ones about, editing software, just sort of stuff I think is interesting. I just sort of send that out. Or if there's a new course, I don't create like a whole sales funnel, but I just say like, hey, working on this course, here it is. Here's a pre-order. Sometimes I'll send coupon codes to the mailing list because those people did, burn a little bit of extra calories to go one step further. And it is really nice to know that I on my own, I have a group of people that I can reach out to or contact with or stay in touch with or keep updated. And I'm not reliant on any other platforms to do that. I've got some other links. I've got a link to a media kit, a link to equipment. This is also where you can leave a message for the podcast. So there's, it says leave a message for the podcast and you can click a button, start recording. And then I've got just some other like social media links and stuff. So the main page is just it's kind of the most commonly used stuff, right? That makes sense. I've got a menu at the top of mine. All of them are just direct links to pages. So like I just put them in alphabetical order. It was hard to figure out like what's most important. So it just goes about, articles, courses, downloads, equipment, ethics, podcasts. So just alphabetical order. And each one of those, like if you click on the podcast one, it shows all the podcasts. And then I also embedded little players there. So that way you can see the 5 most recent episodes. Or right there, you could just click and listen to any of the 5 most recent episodes from those podcasts. The articles page, because I was sending out these mailing things, and I know how email works. Not everyone's opening it up. Even if they do, like you send it out and within a few days, it's completely forgotten about. But I kind of like the stuff I was making. So I started essentially turning them into blog posts. So that way the info is still there. So the articles page is like more fleshed out versions of kind of like email newsletters, blog posts, other stuff that, other stuff is there. Sometimes it's even recaps of videos. So if I made it like the most recent one is the Rodecaster Pro really worth it, which at the time I'm recording this is my most recent video. So it's not just like the transcript of the video, but it's a nice complement to the video, I guess. I have a courses page where obviously, of course, you can see all the courses. And then each course, if you click on that, it goes to that courses page. I use Podia to host my courses. So it goes to like the Podia page where people can see more and then actually register if they want to. There's a download page. There's a downloads page. And this is cool because everything's free. It's like every time I make something in a video, like if I do a thumbnail video, in the description to that video, I'll link like a Photoshop file for a thumbnail template. Or if I do a Final Cut Pro preset video, I'll do all that. So I've just sort of collected all of that in one spot. So I have some presets, some LUTs, some Photoshop files, camera settings, even some 3D printing files I've made. I have YouTube banner templates, even a Google, like a template of my Google revenue spreadsheet. I've got just sort of like anything that I would upload to include in a video description or just something I've made that I want to share with other people, I just throw it here. But everything on this page is free, and you don't need to like register to download it. It's just click and download, and that's it. I have an equipment page. In the description of all my videos, I have an equipment list, but this is sort of that more in depth. It's not every piece of gear I own, but it's a lot of the most common ones. So I have it broken into sections that are cameras, lenses, audio, lighting, computers, and software. And then I have miscellaneous fun gear. And so for each thing, what I've done is I've put a picture that I've taken of the thing. So I didn't just go get the product photo, but it's like, here's the thing, me using it, or the thing in my studio, so you can see what it is. And then I did a little tiny blurb under each one that explains why I like it, what it is, what I use it for. And then I do have affiliate links on the bottom of that. So, whatever places I would recommend buying it from. If you want to know more about it, you click that. So this is kind of one of those win-win things. It reminds me of when the first Lego movie came out, and people were like, I love that movie. That was like one of my favorite movies. But some people were like, this is just a giant ad for Lego. And I was like, maybe. But I don't really care, because this is like a really well-made movie. It's fun and enjoyable. It does naturally, organically lend itself to like making Lego sets from the movie, and people want to buy Lego because they saw it in the movie. But that, to me, it just didn't bother me. It just felt like organic and natural in a way that worked. This, I hope, feels the same way, where it's like, I'm listing all of my equipment. People might be interested if they see the Sony FX3 and they see me talk about why I use it. They probably want a link to go look at it and see what the price is, see what it includes or whatever. Why not make that an affiliate link? Like, the person's going to want a link anyway. There's no reason for it not to just be an affiliate link. So this page provides info and is a resource, but it is also very, very minorly a way to generate revenue, because there's affiliate links there. And then the last page that I didn't talk about to the end is the About page. So it's actually the first one, because it starts with an A. But this is the only page on my website where if you mouse over it, there is another drop-down menu. So everything else, you can click on articles. Oh, the ethics statement, yeah. If you click on ethics, there's the whole ethics statement. We've covered that ad nauseum. So we don't need to talk about that again today, but that's where it is. And then each of those pages is just its own thing. So himynameistom.com/ethics/download/podcasts or whatever. The About one, though, if you mouse over that, then more options pop up. So if you click just on it, it won't go anywhere. You have to select one of those other ones. That's where I have my About Me page, which is the super long, it's way too long. It's like a book. Super long bio of everything from like, it's the thing I put out there because it ended up being fun for me to track this stuff. But also if somebody wants to know, like, do I listen to this guy? Do I trust this guy? What's this guy's background? That question that always pops up on YouTube, like, where's your work? What do you do? Like that whole thing. Not that those people are going to be the people who click here and read this, but it is there. It's all there. You can figure it out and make judgment for yourself if you want. There's a contact page under the About section. And this is where, that's why I told you earlier, like, that you can go to contact@himynameistom.com. I'm telling you that because you're special and you listen to this podcast. But I don't really have that email actually listed anywhere, including on my YouTube channel. We've talked about this a couple of years ago when I did an episode about keeping your channel safe. I don't like to put out email addresses anywhere because I don't want people to do weird things to those email addresses. Not necessarily like, it's just risky, you know? If you have like the email address that you use for your YouTube channel, and that's also your main contact thing, and it's also on your website, and it's also how you're doing your business stuff, it's very risky. So I have too many email addresses. I have like separate ones for everything, specifically to kind of like mitigate that sort of risk. And I never have like 2 YouTube channels under one email address or anything like that. So my contact form, I used to have it be one of the main pages, but I kind of hid it because I was getting so much like, I wouldn't call it spam. I was getting a lot of weird, like, you know, overseas companies wanting essentially free reviews, and it just was filling up the inbox. And I was also getting a lot of technical support things. So Heather helped me redo this a while ago, where I was like, I don't want to make it hard to contact, but I want to make it like almost a last resort. I don't want to pull a Wix and be uncontactable, but I want to know, I don't want everyone to very easily be able to like reach out for random tech support stuff because it's just too emotionally taxing and it gets very stressful. So I have a few frequently asked questions. It's like, can I book a consultation? Sorry that I'm not available at this time. So I'm trying to if this is a question you have, here's already an answer. Maybe you don't necessarily need to even reach out. I do have a thing that says, how can I reach out to you about business or partnership inquiries? And I say, if you want to do that, definitely check out this ethics statement first and then use the form below. This has been hugely helpful because since I added this here, or since Heather told me to add this here, I've gotten so many messages from people where they say, hey, I love your channel, this kind of stuff. I've already checked out the ethics statement. Like, they're already familiar with that before we even talk for the first time. And that's been great. I have a thing about tech support, which, I link to like, hey, my channel is a great resource. I'm sure that whatever device you're working with has a tech support team that's probably more capable of handling what I need or what you need than I am. And then you can, if all that doesn't work and you still want to reach out, you can contact me. You can select topics. And so there's like 3 different categories of message. And what that does is on my end, even though they all go to the same email address, it puts them in different folders. And so I can not feel as overwhelmed by here's an inbox with a bunch of messages, but I can know like it's these types of messages, that types of message. The cool thing about this is nobody knows what email address this goes to unless I reply to them. So they send this form, it goes to my contact email address, but they don't see that unless I reply to them, and then they see it's reply from contact@himynameistom.com. And this is the only thing that email address is used for. It's not connected to anything else. So, it's the most public email address and it's not used for anything else. Same, honestly, though, with the podcast one. Whenever I tell people if you want to send stuff to the podcast, do tom@enthusiasmproject.com. It's a different URL. And that's podcast specific. I don't have that listed anywhere. That email is not used for anything except this podcast. So that's, I know what I'm looking for when I check that email. I know who has that email address. It's people who listen to the podcast or got it from there. So it's been a nice organizational and security measure. Under the About section, I also have a media kit, which we've talked about. Whole episodes about media kit, but that's another place you could download that. I created a page for curriculum. So since I had my school program websites with all the stuff that I had made, I had all those files. They're all assignments that I made, put together, developed over the years, and I felt bad that they were just sort of sitting there. So I try to create a nice directory where anybody, because a lot of teachers will reach out sometimes and ask questions, both high school and college or even middle school. And so I tried to put all of my project prompts, or at least a lot of them, for different classes there, along with the course descriptions that I had to submit to the state of California for approval and stuff. So those are all things that can be used in other people's classes, or if they're writing courses. It's just helpful stuff for people who try to teach stuff or want to figure that out. And then I do have a support page, which people had asked, so I put this here and I felt a little weird. That's why I put it in a subheading and not a main page. But it's just a thing that says monetary support is not something that's ever expected. However, sometimes people genuinely want to show support for what I do. So here's how. And then I have 3 things. Number 1, just keep doing what you're doing. And it just says, I'm flattered you'd spend your time with me. That's your most valuable resource. So if you just keep enjoying and sharing what I make, that's the best way to support me. I've got links to Patreon and YouTube channel memberships, and also a link to a Buy Me a Coffee, because Patreon and YouTube are obviously recurring. And then Buy Me a Coffee is a very easy one-time, oh, you did a thing that helped me. Thanks. Here you go. And so that's there. I feel weird having it there, but enough people have asked that I put it there. And that's kind of what's on my website, and I change it all the time. A really fun thing, though, about Squarespace is there are unlinked and unlisted pages and unused features that I use from time to time. So Heather and I started our Mighty Network community a couple years ago, and there was a time where I was really cleaning out a whole bunch of equipment. I essentially just wanted to donate the equipment, but I didn't know people locally who would actually use it. And I didn't just want to give it to a random Goodwill where it's just going to not necessarily be treated great, maybe. I wanted to send stuff like microphones and lights and recorders and things to people who needed them and would use them. I didn't necessarily want to sell them, but I also didn't want to be totally broke from shipping globally, especially. And so I built a little storefront for people in that community where everything was $1 plus like $20 shipping. So I guess everything was $21 really. But that way people could go in, they could buy what they want. It would automatically collect. It worked like a store, like an online store. It's just everything was $1. But by doing that, it would automatically collect their address, their shipping info. They would pay for shipping, and then I would just send them the thing. And so I did that a few times. Like collected a bunch of gear, got to the point where I was ready to listed it. Obviously, nice gear for $1 or $21 or whatever goes pretty quickly. So it's only, a day or an hour or two that it really works. So it's not a page that's on the website publicly, but it's a really nice, easy way for me to handle that and to ship stuff out and to be organized. So I've used the shopping feature of Squarespace. I also was doing consultations for like a couple of years, and I used the scheduling feature. I even had a page on my website, and maybe it'll come back at some point. I don't know, but it was nice. It was the whole calendar. People could book an appointment. We could do everything from there. It would even auto-generate a Zoom link. So when that time came, it would just go into my Zoom. We could just log in. Boop, we're right there. It's super easy. They could, I had questions they would fill out. So I had, some background info on what we were going to talk about before the meeting and all that kind of stuff. So I've used some of the cool things that Squarespace has, even though they're not always visible on the website. They're really cool tools that you can use for other stuff. So that's been really fun. And the website just changes a lot. And I have a lot of fun going through and updating the pages and changing things and moving things around. It's been a personal website for a while. My push lately is to try to make it more of a resource, or not more of a resource, add more resources in there, add more downloads, add more course curriculum stuff, add more, articles that are helpful, stuff where it's like, someone could stumble across the website and go like, oh yeah, this is the guy from the YouTube channel. And then maybe spend a few minutes clicking through pages and seeing something, So that's my website. There's no ads or anything. I just, it loses money every year, but it's fine. It's worth it. It's not, I think the domain is $20 a year. I think I pay $20 a month for all of the email domains. And then the hosting is $200 or $300 a year. So that's not no money, but in the course of a year and for how much I use it and how useful it is, it's really helpful. So speaking of helpful, I hope that this was helpful in listening to all this and going through the website thing. The big goal here is to advocate for you to have your own website if you don't already. If you do already have your own website, maybe you picked up some things to add to it or new ways to use it or ways to evolve it. And ultimately, if you've heard that advice where you see people saying, you should have your own website, but you don't even know where to begin, I hope you have at least a bit of an idea of where to begin, and I appreciate that. If you do have questions about that, of course, reach out anytime. You can send messages to tom@enthusiasmproject.com, or you can use the link on my website, hi-my-name-is-tom.com, to click the record thing and ask your question. We'll do that in a future episode. We've got 3 episodes left this season, so get those questions in quick so they don't get delayed until the next season. But otherwise, I hope you enjoyed that. I had a lot of fun talking about that, and I appreciate you spending your time with me, and hope you have a safe, happy, healthy, fun rest of your week, and I will see you next time.